Nobody just goes missing. Let me say it one more time because you need to understand this. Nobody just disappears without a trace. Human beings don't function like that. No matter how secretive an individual is, he or she will always leave some traces or some signals or some signs behind that something was wrong. And what I'm sharing this video is an understanding that will benefit you when you use it the right way. When a crime occurs, don't look at similar cases, because that's what a lot of people do. They look at similar cases to look for a pattern, and there's nothing wrong with that. Eventually you should do that, but before you look at similar cases, look at who is not affected by the crime. Every crime affects the community. Some crimes are more grievous than others, but crime affects the community. Someone that's completely not affected by something happens, perhaps by something that happened close to him or close to her, that's the individual you need to watch out for. For example, this doesn't relate directly to missing persons, but okay, let's say there's a neighborhood, and there are often robberies in the neighborhood. Let's say that in 2018 there were like 34 robberies. So when you hear about this, you begin to ask which stores or which cafeterias were robbed. But then you notice that there is this one business, this Korean shop, that's never attacked, and for the past 5 years never had any trouble with any criminals, and only been there for 6 years. Then you realize, hold on a minute, that Korean shop also has many expensive stuff in there. Why didn't any of the criminals think, you know what, there are expensive things over there, let's rob there? And then you find out by doing your own research that the owners of that Korean shop, they have quite some money because they travel often to Korea. And you know that the plane tickets outside of the holiday seasons are not cheap. And often they go with their whole family to Korea and come back. And then you realize, hold on a minute, if their only source of income is that shop, and they 10 or 20 together travel to Korea often and back, where do they get the money for? Where do they get the money to finance those trips to Korea and at the same time maintain that shop? You realize that something doesn't add up. And from there, if you do further research, you'll find out that that Korean family is part of a pagan cult where those criminals come to get their empowerment. That is what you would find out if you go very deep. But most people don't go very deep. But most people don't even notice that there's something wrong with that Korean shop. They just think, oh, it's just a Korean shop. They're lucky that none of the criminals bothered them. Then you need to ask, how come they are in a neighborhood where robberies occur all the time and they're not affected at all? Now what does this have to do with missing persons? When someone goes missing, people notice it. Someone had a job. They're not at a job anymore. The boss is going to ask, where is Bart? Let's say Bart disappears. He's going to ask, where's Bart? He's going to call around. If Bart maybe have visited a supermarket often, someone over there is going to notice, huh? I don't see that gentleman here anymore. They may have friends. Those friends are going to think, huh? Why do I not receive any text messages from Bart anymore? So anytime someone goes missing, people notice it. If they had an apartment, then the landlord will come at the end of 2 months when he or she doesn't receive any rent, and they will realize, on a minute, nobody opens the door. This individual hasn't been home for almost 2 months. So nobody just disappears like that. Whenever disappearance happens, Look at the close environment of the missing individual who is not affected. Now, I'm not saying that the one that's not affected is always involved with the crime. However, that is the direction many don't look into. And often, when police conduct an investigation, figure out that the one that was least suspected was the suspect and often the perpetrator all along. In some detective series or police series, they even show you this. It's not always the obvious individual that's the perpetrator. Because human beings are complex beings, but despite the fact that social life can be complex, common people, which are the majority, which is the majority of human population, they operate in patterns. And once you understand how common people operate in patterns, and that they above all are seeking relief all the time, once you understand this, it will be far easier for you to see what's going on and who is behind something. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and play detective. I'm teaching you this to assist you in being alert in your environment, because Christ called us to be alert. Again, I'm going to say it one more time, then I'm going to close. Nobody just disappears. Either someone is fleeing from enemies, maybe someone was threatened, and that's why he or she leaves, threatened by people that don't want to see him or her over there. Or maybe someone has conflict at the job and they are too embarrassed to go there, so that means they're fleeing, and that's why they just disappeared. Or someone has been kidnapped. Now, most of the time kidnappings are rituals done by the shadow government to sacrifice people onto demons. But there are also incidents where someone is kidnapped, even though those are not that common as people think it is. Because to kidnap a human being, it takes a lot of preparation, a lot of effort. Because human beings don't just sit back and allow you to kidnap them. They resist. Things can get very ugly. Even if you have a gun, it can get out of hand. And things can go wrong for the kidnappers. So either or. Now in some cases someone just wants to leave and start a new life, even though, well, that doesn't happen that way. Because if you arrive in a new place without a consistent story about your past, we're going to ask questions. But just realize, folks don't just vanish like that. In some cases, this is the case. Now, I'm not saying it's always the case, but to you, folks who are listening to this, who are spiritual minded, you can understand this. There are times someone prays for protection, and because of that prayer, negative energy bounces back onto perpetrators. And once the perpetrators realize that negative energy is now on them, they realize that things have bounced back. And once things have bounced back, they realize that, oh, more repercussions may come. So the perpetrators leave. It can be that you have a couple, though both are believers, and they're praying onto the Most High, they walk by faith, and suddenly a neighbor across the street disappears. They just migrated. They moved away out of the blue. The people in the neighborhood couldn't understand why the family left like that. But later, someone informed the believing couple that the people that lived there couldn't stand them, and that they were spreading rumors about them throughout the neighborhood. But that one day, when they had relatives over there, they were discussing negativity about the couple, that like a earthquake entered their home, and things shook all the time. The flat screen TV fell to the ground, many dishes broke in the kitchen, so they had a destructive earthquake. But when the relatives went outside, they saw there was no earthquake anywhere in the neighborhood. So those relatives left and never came back. That family realized that Someone was after them, so they left. In this case, the prayer of the believing couple worked. The perpetrators, those that agreed evil on them, disappeared. But that can also be the case that people just left because they are escaping consequences. But this is not to say that when someone vanishes, it's because of that. I don't want you to make too false conclusions, but just whenever you encounter a case of someone going missing, just look at the bigger picture. First, check who's not affected, why are they not affected, and then you can check the patterns. But you just dive into the patterns directly. Look at who's not affected. Well, that's it for now. Keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.